لا إله إلا الله 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 لا إله إلا الله جود علينا
Allah Almighty, and sending salutations, peace and blessings upon the best of creation, the jewel and crown of creation, the beloved of Allah Almighty, the coolness to our eyes, the purpose of our lives, the reviver of our hearts, the inspirer to our minds, the awakener of our souls, the most honored one, the most praised one, the most generous one, the most kind one. Undoubtedly, he is the most beautiful one. None other than Sayyiduna Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi wa ashabihi wa barak wa sallam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Al-Quran Al-Kareem, He mentioned in Surah An-Nahl, verse number 90. Allah Jalla wa Ala, He said, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَأْمُرُ بِالْعَدْلِ وَالْإِحْسَانِ وَإِيتَاءِ ذِي الْقُرْبَى. Certainly, without any shadow of a doubt, Allah Almighty orders justice and good conduct. Our religion, Islam, is found upon justice. One of the major aspects and pillars of this religion is adl, justice. Adl can also be translated to fairness. Allah Almighty has ordered us, in this verse of the Quran, He orders in general justice, but in another verse, He said, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا كُونُوا قَوَّامِينَ بِالْقِسْطِ شُهَدَاءَ لِلَّهِ وَلَوْ عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَوِ الْوَالِدَيْنِ وَالْأَقْرَبِينَ. O you who believe, O people of Iman, be persistent in standing firm in justice. كُونُوا قَوَّامِينَ. Be persistent, be consistent in standing firm in justice. Standing firm in justice. Shuhada'a lillah. Witnesses for Allah Almighty, even if it's against yourself, or your parents, or your close relatives. Or you who believe, يا أيها الذين آمنوا كونوا قوامين بالقسط. Be persistent, become people who stand, قوامين, people who establish justice. Qawwam can also mean establishing, it can also mean standing. Both meanings are applicable and correct here. Become people who are firm in justice, steadfast upon justice. People who establish adl and insaf. They establish justice. Shuhada'a lillah. All of this witnesses to who? Allah. Walau ala anfusikum. Even if it means you have to stand for justice against yourself. If it means that you have to, if you are in the wrong, acknowledging and accepting that you are in the wrong. Justice, even if it's against your own parents. You see, love and respect for our parents is one thing. We must love and respect our parents. We must honor them. But Allah Almighty is telling us here that if there is a scenario, a case, where you have to establish justice, adl, and that is against your parents, in front of your parents, يعني adl and insaf, truth, establishing justice against your own parents, Allah Almighty is ordering us here, justice should prevail even if it's against your own parents. Adl is what takes priority even if it's against the maqam of your parents. وَلَوْ عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِكُمْ. If it's against you, even if it's against yourself. And then in the other one he said, أَوِ الْوَالِدَيْنِ. Or your parents, أَوِ الْأَقْرَبِينَ. or even your close relatives. Allah Jalla wa Ala orders us here, وَإِذَا قُلْتُمْ فَعْدِلُوا وَلَوْ كَانَ ذَا قُرْبَى. In Surah Al-An'am, Allah Jalla wa Ala, He said what? And when you speak, فَعْدِلُوا, be just in your speech. Be fair in your speech. وَإِذَا قُلْتُمْ فَعْدِلُوا وَلَوْ كَانَ ذَا قُرْبَى. Even if your speech is sour, even if your speech is bitter, but you stand upon the truth and justice, you are fair, even if it's against your own relatives. Sachi baat karni hai. Speak the truth. Even if it's against your own cousins. Establish justice. I'tidal. The moment the scales of justice are imbalanced, then fitna will appear in society. And by Allah, we are living in that time when there is no adl and insaf between spouses, parents, children, relatives, land. How many issues, how many cases do we hear of people कि मेरे नाल बे-इंसाफी हुई है? No justice was established for me. It wasn't a fair verdict that was given. This wasn't a fair conclusion to this case. This was an issue, this was an issue, this was an issue. I've had issues with my wife, I've had issues with my children, I've had issues with my parents. And justice was not established. One father, he leaves more to one son than he leaves to others. There's no adl insaf. Fathers will give their sons everything, but they will not give their daughters their haqq. Where's the adl and insaf in this? And then you wonder why in our families there are problems. When we are not establishing fairness, when we are not establishing justice, when there is no adl, in order to become a person of justice, a person of adl and insaf, that person has to be someone who doesn't lie. A person who doesn't have bemani inside him. Such a person can establish adl and insaf. This is why when the qazi, when the mufti or the amir, he is waiting for who? He's waiting for eyewitness accounts of moon sighting. They say that whose moon sighting eyewitness account will be accepted? The person who is of adl and insaf, the person who is of justice, the person of good character, a person who has good character inside him, somebody who has good integrity about him. Such people's witnessings will be accepted in the court of law. If a person who is a liar, a person who he steals from people, he robs people, he does injustice to people, when that person comes to the court of law, he comes to the qazi and he says, Qazi Sahab, I've seen the moon. He'll say, we can't accept your witnessing. We've heard about your credibility. There's questions about your credibility. There's doubt now inside you, who you are, what you are. Therefore, we can't do this. Adl and insaf. Allah Jalla wa Ala says in the Quran, وَإِذَا قُلْتُمْ فَعْدِلُوا. Never mind, and it's key. Majority of the time, adl and insaf is established by words. Words is what establishes fairness. And this fairness, this justice, this is a virtue. This is a great quality that Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, this is a sifat of Allah Jalla wa Ala. Allah Almighty, one of His names is Al-Adil. Allah is the most just. Al-Munsif. Allah is the most fair. There is no one who is more just and more fair than Allah Almighty. And after Allah Jalla wa Ala, nobody is more adil and munsif than Sayyiduna Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam is the most just and fair. And this is shown that Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, she narrates that amongst the Quraysh there was the Banu Makhzum. And this woman from the Banu Makhzum tribe, Makhzumiyya, she had stolen. The people said, who's going to speak to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam about her, about this case, that this very powerful woman from the Banu Makhzum tribe, she has stolen. Who's going to tell the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasallam? They said, look, none of us have the courage to go. Let's decide upon one person who Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasallam loves daily, and he loves Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasallam daily. They said, Usama bin Zayd radiyallahu anhu, Sayyidina Usama, you go and you tell Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasallam, this woman has stolen. She's robbed, she's thieved. And then Sayyidina Usama spoke to Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasallam, told him. And Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasallam said, are you going to interject in the had from the hudud of Allah Almighty? Are you saying that we should not establish the had, the capital punishment or the punishment in relation to the punishments Allah Almighty has established for the person who steals? Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam stood up and they began delivering a sermon. And Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam said, إِنَّمَا أَهْلَكَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ أَنَّهُمْ كَانُوا إِذَا سَرِكَ فِيهُمُ الشَّرِيفُ تَرَكُوهُ. Nations before you were destroyed. Nations before you, qawm, aqwam, tribes, nations were destroyed before you. Why? When someone of nobility and status, someone of status would steal amongst them, they would leave him. And when someone weak would steal, they would punish him. This is what used to happen. I pay someone off, you can't punish me. But the weak, they will be punished. Isn't this what happens in Pakistan? Isn't this why Pakistan, Africa, Libya, Palestine, isn't this what happens in Saudi Arabia? That the rich, they will pay off and they will avoid the had and the punishment. And when the poor person steals, they will order that his hand be chopped off immediately. Nations before you were destroyed because of this reason. Nations before you were destroyed because there was no adal, no insaf, there was no justice. The rich got away with murder, literally. And the poor, well, they had to pay the price. And when this happens, that justice cannot be established, adl and insaf cannot be established, then what will happen? Those communities will be imbalanced and injustice will prevail. And when injustice prevails, then you will see all this haram around you prevalent. You will see fitnas appear. You will see murder take place. You will see all and many of these things happening, lying, backbiting. Where does this come from? Injustice. When there is no insaf and no adl being done. And we see Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam continued. They said, I take an oath by Allah, I make Allah witness, that if my daughter Fatima al-Zahra radiyallahu anha, and who doesn't know the maqam of Sayyida Fatima? Who doesn't know who this great woman is? She is the queen of Jannah. She is the leader of the women of paradise. No woman is allowed to enter Jannah until she enters Jannah. It is haram upon any woman to enter paradise until the daughter of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam enters paradise. But look at how powerful this statement Allah's Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam said. They said, nations before you were destroyed. Why? Because the rich and those of status, when they would do something wrong, justice would not be established upon them, punishment would not be given to them. Those who were weak amongst that community, if they did wrong, had would be established upon them, punishments would be established on them. The weak would be punished, the poor would get away, the rich would get away with it. Rasulullah said, I take an oath by Allah, I swear by Allah, that if my daughter Fatima was to steal, if my own daughter Fatima to Zahra, radiyallahu ta'ala anha, she was to steal, then I would order her hand to be cut off as well. Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam said, I would order my daughter's hand to be cut off if she was found to be stealing. Sayyidah Fatima to Zahra radiyallahu ta'ala anha would never do this. She is pure. She is the daughter of Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam. But what is Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam establishing here? They are saying the punishment would be established even upon my daughter. Nobody is safe from the law of Allah. Nobody is free and protected from the law of Allah. In the court of Allah Almighty, we will all be held responsible. We will all have to answer in the court of Allah Jalla wa Ala. And for answering in the court of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, what answers will we give? If we cannot establish justice now, so many cases of fathers will have so much property and land. They will not give their daughters a share of this. Rather, they will give their chosen son it. Why? What is happening in Pakistan? Why is Pakistan in the state it's in? I don't want to go into too much politics. Because there's no justice. The justice system is corrupt. There is a corrupt justice system. The foundations of every community, the foundations of the religion of Islam, our deen is what? Justice, adl. Inna Allah ya'murukum bil adli. Allah orders you to be just. He orders you, Inna Allah ya'muru bil adli wal ihsan ya ayyuha alladhina amanu kunu qawwamina bil qist. Establish justice wherever you go. Be just, be fair. And there was none more fair than Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Fairness is a part of justice. It is a value on which exceptions cannot be made. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam was fair and he commanded fairness. And he forbade partiality. Remaining impartial is key. That's why one of the most difficult jobs is the job of the hakim, the job of the judge. When someone is being placed in a position of being a judge, कि तुसी फैसला करो जी, you establish a ruling here. It's a very difficult job. Not everyone can stand and sit in this place of justice. Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam told us this. And there was no one more just than Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam. There was no one who had more fairness than the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And we must be just and fair to Allah Almighty. How? That we only worship Him and associate no partners to Him. This is how we are fair with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that we do not establish any partners with Allah Almighty. We only worship Him alone. Inna shirka la zulmun azim, in Surah Luqman, Allah Almighty said. And fairness to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam is what? That you believe in Him, you love Him, you honor Him. La yu'minu ahadukum hatta akuna ahabba ilayhi min walidihi wa waladihi wa nasi ajma'in. Fairness with Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam is that you love Him, you obey Him, you honor Him sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam. And fairness to oneself is what? Safeguarding your iman. Fairness to oneself is refraining from what is harmful to you. To abstain from what is harmful, this is how you are fair to yourself. And adhering to what is encouraged and obliged and ordered and obeying this, this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us to do. Then establishing and doing this, this is from what? Fairness to oneself. And then Sayyidina Salman radiyallahu anhu, he said to Sayyidina Abu Darda, Abu Darda radiallahu anhu was a very famous companion. Sayyidina Salman al-Farisi radiallahu anhu, he was also a very famous companion. And fairness to oneself is not to overburden yourself. Be fair on yourself. All night you stand in ibadat and you don't give your wife any right. Fairness to oneself is that you give Allah the right that He deserves, you give your wife the rights that she deserves, and you give yourself time and rights that you deserve. And for this reason, forsaking the worldly life like monks in monasteries do, this is prohibited. How? Sayyidina Salman advised Sayyidina Abu Darda. Sayyidina Abu Darda, he was like a monk. He lived his entire life in worship. Just ibadah. Worshipping, worshipping, worshipping. Got married. Darda radiallahu anha, she complained. My husband, all night he prays. He gives me no time. Sayyidina Salman called his friend Abu Darda and says, I'm going to advise you. Inna li rabbika haqqan. Inna li rabbika alayka haqqan. Wa li nafsika alayka haqqan. Wa li ahlika alayka haqqan. فأعطي كل ذي حق حقه فقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم صدق سلمان. Hadith is narrated in Bukhari. Sayyidina Salman said, Abu Darda, your Lord has upon you rights, fulfill them. You upon yourself have rights, fulfill them. Your family have rights over you, fulfill them. فأعطي كل ذي حق حقه. Give every haqq to where it belongs. The haqq that your wife and your children have, your mother and your father have, give them this. Yani, be fair. Don't just give everything to Allah or give everything in terms of your time and everything in worship that you don't go out to earn for your wife and your children. That's wrong. You must earn for your wife and your children. They have hukuk over you, they have rights over you. Your parents have rights over you. Fulfill the rights of your parents. Allah Almighty has rights over you. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam have rights over you. Therefore, fulfill these hukuk. Be fair. Don't give too much time to your boys that you spend all night outside with them and you have no time for your wife. Don't give time to your relatives and you don't give time to your mother and father. Be fair. Find this balance. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam told us, how do we have fairness to our parents? وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّاهُ وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. And be good to your parents. Fairness with your relatives is to join kinship. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, الرَّحِمُ مُعَلَّكَةٌ بِالْعَرْشِ. The ties of kinship. You know what kinship is? Your relatives, your cousins. These rights that, you know, from your mother, your brother, your nephews, your sister, her children, your relatives, your father's brothers, your father's sisters, your mother's brothers, your mother's sisters. These are kinship. These are ties of kinship. الرحم معلقة بالعرش تقول من وصلني وصله الله ومن قطعني قطعه الله. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said the ties of kinship are attached to the arsh of Allah. These rishtadari, this brotherism or this relativeness, having relationships, your cousins, what is this? This is connected, mu'allakatun bi arsh. This is connected to the throne of Allah Jalla wa ala. And Allah Almighty, what does it say? It says, Allah will keep connection with him, he who keeps good relations with me. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Yani, Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam said, Silatul Rahim is saying this. Ties of kinship is saying, he who keeps good ties with me, with family and relatives, etc., is good with them, then Allah Almighty is good with him as well. Allah will keep ties with him. He who breaks his ties with his family, Allah Almighty will break his ties with him as well. Yani, have adl and insaf with your family, fairness. Be good to them. And look how we are. One argument and we will fight each other. One argument, I've had enough. I'm not staying here. One argument, who are you? We will cut ties of kinship with our brothers over what? He who does not speak to his brother for 3 days. What did Rasulullah ﷺ say? And how many days have we broken ties with our brothers? Our blood brothers, never mind brothers outside from other mothers. Our own blood brothers, we will not keep ties with. Why? Over petty things. Yani insaf, fairness, adl, justice. When you do not establish justice within your families, adl and insaf, then this is what will happen. You will have problems in your families. You will have problems with your spouses. You will have problems with your siblings. You will have problems with your parents. Why? Because there's no adl, no insaf. And where must you go back to when you want to establish adl and insaf? To the Quran and the Sunnah. What does the Quran and Sunnah say? What does Allah and His Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam say? That's what you use to establish justice. I can say, oh, he's my mate, I'll give him the ruling. Is this adl? No. Is this fairness? No. I'm doing it because he's my friend. Because there's bias here. Yani you need to remain impartial when it comes to these matters. This impartiality is key. That's where fairness, this is how fairness is established. Allah's Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam told us this. He said, Ittaqullah, fear Allah Almighty, wa'adilu bayna awladikum. Be just and fair when it comes to your children. Yani Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam said, Ittaqullah, fear Allah, wa'adilu bayna awladikum. Look at the words, clear. Be fair when it comes to your children. Don't give one son more than the other. Don't deprive your daughters of their rights. Our community, sadly, unfortunately, because of lack of knowledge, because of ignorance, we think daughters are prayen malan, or barane malan. They go outside, they're there now. Yes, they married out, they gone to another family, etc. But she's still your daughter. She still has haq to the miras. She still has right to this inheritance. Go and learn this. Study this so that you can give your daughter her right. That tomorrow in your grave you will not be questioned. Tomorrow on the day of judgment, when you get to the doors of paradise, your daughter is standing there and saying, why didn't you give me my right? Why did you give my brothers everything and you forgot me? You said you loved me. One man came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, hadith is narrated here. Sayyidina Anas radiallahu anh said that a man came, he sat with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. His son came, and he kissed his son and sat his son into his laps. His daughter came and he made his daughter sit next to him. And Rasulullah said, do you think you've done right with your children? Kya aapne adl kiya hai ya nahi? Have you done adl with your daughter here? You kissed your son but you didn't kiss your daughter. You sat your son in your laps but you didn't sit your daughter next to you in your laps. Why? Why did you give your son more love than you gave your daughter it? Yani even something as small as kissing your son, over kissing your daughter, this is be-insafi as well. This is not justice. What is going to appear inside the heart of that daughter? What was the daughter feeling? That the son is getting a kiss and the daughter doesn't get a kiss. Yani this happened in front of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Be just. Be fair. Be equal in your treatment. Be fair and equal in your treatment with your children. Wattaqullah wa'adilu bayna awladikum. Have adl with your children. Why? On the day of judgment, إِنَّمَا أَمْوَالُكُمْ وَأَوْلَادُكُمْ فِتْنَةٌ. Your wealth and your children are a test. And you will be asked about how did you treat your children? How was you with your son? How was you with your daughter? Did you give them the rights they deserved? And this is what Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us. May Allah Jalla wa ala make us people of adl and insaf. May Allah Almighty make us people of justice. May we learn justice. May Allah Almighty remove hatred and rancor from our hearts. May there be only love and peace and goodness in our hearts for one another. وأقول قولي هذا استغفر الله لي ولكم وآخر دعواي أن الحمد لله رب العالمين.
لا إله إلا الله 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 لا إله إلا الله جود علي